City Shuttle Service that used to be SSB. This one is common knowledge. And then these were like part of the park and ride schemes back then. It's like, I believe Lorong 1 Geylang was designated as like a park and ride scheme. It was kind of like a mini depot for like CSS buses back then. So it was like you ride your motorcycle or you ride your car, van, whatever to these areas like for short distance. So basically your private vehicle is considered like the feeder commute, and then you would take the CSS buses, back then it is SSB, to the various different locations. I mean, this one's common knowledge. If I'm not mistaken, there were like routes 1 to 11. I don't recall if routes that are above number 11 if they even existed, but back then I know that SSB they had like, peak hour routes, and then they also have like off-peak variants for the same routes. It's hard to memorize, it is very very messy, and then it was like, okay, during peak hours it calls this bus stop, but during off-peak hours it skips it or it takes an entirely different route. It's yeah, I'm not gonna go into that because like it is really really hard to explain it, and it'll take forever. And then some of the more notable routes were like Service 6, and then there was also like Service 9 as well. But the reason why they didn't survive into like the CSS number conversion era whereby they converted into 60 something. Okay, so this one was like the final variation of this route was like Bukit Merah to Circuit Road, which means like MacPherson Estate. So if I'm not mistaken, this one was kind of like it. I think it duplicated 63 up till I think Clarke Quay. Then it went on to Little India, which meant that it like duplicated a little bit of like 60, not a little bit, but a lot of 65. So you can kind of say that like Service 6, it was kind of like outclassed by 63, 64, 65, or even to a lesser extent 61. And then 9 was like Bukit Merah to GL1. Now the reason why this one, the route wouldn't really make sense today, but the reason why this one even existed was because, back in the day, this one was actually called 181. But even before this, it belonged to SBS Transit. And let me tell you, SBS, there was no transit back then. And let me tell you, SBS 181 had like one of the stupidest routes in existence. It started from Buona Vista, and then it goes on to like Havelock Road, Clarke Quay, and then Middle Road, Siligi, Bukit Timah, all the way back up to Bukit Panjang. So it was like Bukit Timah, Bukit Panjang. It was like it just like goes in, it just goes here and then it turns back like this. Why did this even exist back then? I mean, like 182. Okay, the route was also kind of similar, but at least that one made sense. It was like Jalan Buroh and then Upper Ayar Raja Road, which is AYE, Alexandra, Clemenceau, and then it was like it went to Orchard and then Bukit Timah, and then it was like, I think it stops around here, which is the current Beauty World. Okay, at least this one sort of makes sense. Unlike 181, which was just like la 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 la. So this was 181's route. Then after that, they changed it so that it goes straight to Crawford Street before it got extended to Geylang Lorong 1 and renumbered 961. So they converted it to this. And the conversion to this was I mean, low-key, the reason why SSB, I mean CSS Service 9, it couldn't sustain anymore, because it's like from Lorong 1 Geylang to Bukit Merah nowadays you would just take 961. But then back then there was like this bus service, it was like being outclassed by 181 as well as like tip service 5 as well. And I mean this is like the predecessor of like 970. So yeah, over time routes get outclassed by others and then they don't survive. So service 6 and then service 9, I mean obviously there are like more examples. I think there are some more that are like Lorong 1 Geylang to Shenton Way and stuff like that. I don't exactly remember which number that was. Was it like I think was it like service 10 or something? Yeah. But yeah, those that survive, like the number conversion era was like, I mean, again, this one is common knowledge. And then this one, it didn't last long. This one was the first service from the number conversion era to not survive. This one was Holland Village to, if I'm not mistaken, it was like Shenton Way, I think. So it wasn't just this one that didn't survive. Even in the past, the first generations of like 190, 191, which were like along the Holland Road corridor to either Chinatown or Shenton. Okay, I think both of these were Shenton Way. They just didn't survive because there was just not enough demand. And then if you want to talk about the other reasons why the routes didn't survive, okay, let's take a look at 603. So 603 was St. Mike's. And then it had a niche area which was called Chancery Lane and then Balmoral Road. And then it would serve like the old Raffles Girls' School, which was like at what's that? Stevens. Draycott Park was like in the direction of St. Mike's and stuff like that. So it would bring the private estate, Chancery, Balmoral, Stevens, to like Orchard, and then it would loop at Clarke Quay. Upper Cross Street loop. You can kind of see the problem with this. St. Mike's to like Chinatown or stuff like that, there are already like other bus services like 145 that like do the job. And the issue with 603 and most of the SSB services in general was that their demand was like way too niche. Yes, I understand that they charge only like 40 cents for kids. I'm not sure what the adult fare was, but I do remember taking 608 when I was a kid, full distance, and I only had to pay 40 cents for that trip. And in comparison, SBS Transit, non-aircon buses, like Volvo Mark II, Volvo B10 and Mark II and stuff like that, they were only 45 cents as opposed to like 55. That was like at that time. But CSS was like incredibly cheap. So, I mean, farebox recovery rate was bad, it wasn't sustainable and stuff like that. And okay, in 603's case, I've already explained that the demand is way too niche. Chancery, Balmoral, Stevens. It's like the only way to make such a service sustainable is instead of St. Mike's, you kind of send it up to somewhere like, I don't know, Toa Payoh, Bishan, Ang Mo Kio, Yio Chu Kang, or stuff like that. You put it at St. Mike's, you're just not getting enough demand. And even when you extend upwards, this one is the kind of service that would only run like 15 maximum to 20-minute frequencies. And you have to OTA it on weekends under current rules. So yeah, 603, the reason why it didn't survive was because the niche private estate demand was like really low. So yeah. And then let's move on to 605. 605 was a little longer. It was Bukit Merah Central, Henderson, Telok Blangah Way, Lower Delta Road, Tiong Bahru Road, and then Cantonment. So this one kind of like duplicated East-West line a little bit. And then, okay, this one is CBD area. And then it will go Coleman, Armenian Street, and then to Orchard. And you can already see why this thing didn't survive. Green and red. MRT. So 605 never stood a chance either. Okay, and if you're wondering about 605, it also went like, I think, Whitley, CJC, and then from there onwards it was like Thompson and Sinming. So this thing, like I said, Sinming, it was outclassed by 162. And okay, maybe it was like marginally faster than 162, especially when Thompson Road gets jammed, like Thompson, Newton, Scott's Road, if like Newton Circus, if it gets jammed up. I don't know how bad the jam was like back then because I didn't really visit like Newton Circus a lot as a kid. I only visited Orchard Road, but not Newton Circus. But I do know that 167 was like terrible. Sometimes the frequency could go up to like 40, not even 14. It's like 40 minutes. It was terrible. So you can assume that like Thompson, Newton Circus, and Scott's Road was like quite bad, even back in like the mid 2000s when I was still a kid. So yeah, Sinming is mostly industrial estate, and this part of Sinming that 605 it's served by 130. It doesn't even like go to like where most of the demand at Sinming is. Okay, most of the demand at Sinming is at Sinming Avenue, which is near like the Thompson East Coast Line TEL station. That is where like most of the condominiums are at. This 605, it just conveniently happens to terminate at Sinming Terminal, which was like near the industrial estate. And then back then, I don't think Marymount was even like developed a lot back then. At most Shunfu Road, and most of the flats there. And that's it. Again, the demand was like very niche. It was like Sinming Thompson. And what you have here is just Teluk Blangah. I mean, from Teluk Blangah, if you want to go to the CBD, just take 131. It like wraps around Harbourfront. So yeah, outclassed. 607. I will never understand this route. It's like, okay, maybe in the past, there was some sort of like compelling reason for this service to exist, but this one was literally just St. Mike's, Momin Road, Thompson, KK Hospital, and then this one just goes on to like CBD, Shenton Way, and then just loops at Outram Park MRT. The exact way it looped was like New Road, Yu-Tong-Sen Street, Cantonment Road. I mean, you look at this and you go like, I mean, KK Hospital, CBD, you have 57. And in one direction, you have 131. 607 is it's just not going to survive. This route makes 0 sense today. This one, I remember the full route by heart because I have actually ridden this from Bedok to Bukit Merah before. When I was a kid, when I was like 8 years old, 2007. So this one, it was really kind of a shame because it had potential, but it was just outclassed by 16 and 196. So this thing's route was like Bedok, South Road, South Avenue 1, Upper East Coast Road, Siglap, Marine Terrace. Wait, no. 608 did not go Marine Terrace. In the past, yes, the very first iteration of like SSB 8, yes, it did go inside Marine Terrace, as in because the terminal was there, but 608, unlike 16 or 196, served Marine Crescent and only Marine Crescent in both directions. It did not touch Marine Terrace like near 2007, like that era. So it was like Marine Crescent. But technically, if you say Marine Terrace, it's also kind of correct because the MRT is outside nowadays. And then it goes back onto East Coast Road, Mountbatten Stadium. It went inside. And then over here, it was kind of like that special CBD sector. So how do I say this? This is kind of like what 608 offers that what 16 and 196 don't. So, okay, I'm gonna use blue to denote. Okay, maybe I'll use a lighter shade of blue. What 608 offers that these two don't offer is basically Shenton Way, Palmer Road, Anson, and Cecil. If you take like 196, okay, I think I gotta say 116, it duplicated sorry, 16, it was similar to 608, but it didn't go CBD. I just have to put it out there just in case some of you watching, you might not know that, you might not be really well versed with the routes in general, and you might think 16 goes to CBD, but no. So what 608 offers that 196 doesn't offer is that Shenton Way, Palmer Road, Anson, Cecil. If you take 196, as I was saying, you have to alight at Shenton Way. You cannot cross over, but 608 at just, I mean, whatever the adult fare was back then, it allowed you to, okay, it wasn't like as fast as like 196 because it detours inside stadium, but the thing about 1608 is that it allows you to access Cecil Street without like having to cross over. So that's one good thing about it. So the unique thing about 608 that no other like SSB or CSS service did was that like it could have very well went like, you know, Telok Ayer, then straight up to like Fullerton, Esplanade, and stuff like that. But it didn't. It actually winded inside the CBD both directions. So the other bound was like Upper Pickering Street. It didn't call the stop there if I recall. South Bridge Road, Maxwell Road, and Robinson Road. You see, this part of like 608 is actually what's really good about 608 in the first place. Okay, 608, the return bound was like more or less similar to 196. But yeah. And then 608, okay, the other side was like Bukit Merah Central, Henderson Road, Tiong Bahru Road, Lower Delta Road, Ganges Avenue. The other bound was like it went inside Havelock Road Minor, which was near Jalan Bukit Ho Swee. Jalan Bukit Ho Swee is like down there. 608 did not touch Tiong Bahru Plaza. You had to walk. That was like the one downside. But 608 had this like niche catchment inside Jalan Bukit Ho Swee. The only reason why I think it isn't really that good was because other options like already existed. And 186 was like straight down and then straight up as well. 608 was like kind of designed to wind. Okay, just a history about 186. The reason why the route looks like was because the predecessor of 985. Okay, 985 was 185 plus 989. It was like a merger between these two services, but the predecessor of 185, yes, I know most people would say, oh, it looped at Beauty World. That's correct, but historically, this thing even went all the way to Shenton Way. And so basically from Shenton Way, Tips 185 was literally a complete duplicate of the current day service 186 up till Farrer Road, then it turns into Bukit Timah Road and not the other way round. And 186 was specifically introduced to restore the link that 185 it left a gap, and then people complained. So they had to introduce 186 to compensate. And the reason why they chose St. Mike's was because it was like how to say, it was like the closest place that they could put and so-called offer new connections. But 186 was basically just to restore the old tips 185. That's the reason why 186 nowadays, I mean the current 186, the route is like so straight. It was because it used to be a part of 185. So yeah. So back to topic 608, it kind of got outclassed by these two services, but I wouldn't really say it was like completely outclassed because again, 186 it goes to like Shenton Way like this. But if you happen to be working near Cecil or Robinson, 608 it went here instead for the Bedok bound. So, see, this is like, it was really a shame that 608 couldn't survive because of stuff like this. Unfortunately, the other bound, it was a complete duplicate of the Bukit Merah bound was a complete duplicate of 186, except that 608 like actually goes inside and not outside. So as much as it wasn't like outclassed in a sense, there was like really heavy competition with 186, and 186 even back then, the frequency was like kind of terrible, and then and then the double deckers were like all split shift only, which kind of tells you that like 186 the demand wasn't like sky high or anything, and when you have something that whose demand isn't really as sky high and then runs like 15-20 minute frequencies, this one just pretty much won't stand a chance. Because all you have is the niche demand from like inside Havelock Road Minor, which is like Jalan Bukit Ho Swee, as well as South Bridge Road, and then that one bus stop along Maxwell Road. It was just one. Robinson. It's just not gonna survive. And even if we talk about like Marine Parade, 16 was like Stadium, Old Airport, Dunman, Joo Chiat. This one big chunk of like 16 is completely unique, even like up till today. Okay, 16, there was a 16E which became 36 that went to Changi Airport, but 16 used to loop at Victoria. I mean that school, Victoria School. And back then, when 608 it got destroyed, 16 had to like cover up this sector. And then, okay, 196 was, oh my god, okay. 196 was like this. And then 608 was kind of like, wait, what am I doing? Sorry. 196 was like this. Okay, this is Stadium. And then 608 was like this, down. East Coast. I need to be specific about this. La 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 la. But just so you know, just look at the amount of overlap between these three services. The reason why even with TEL, because this area has no TEL at all, the reason why 16 can still survive is because the niche area, Old Airport, Dunman, Joo Chiat, is big enough. 608's niche area is just not big enough. And I know it was kind of designed in a way to reduce duplication between 16 and 196, especially along East Coast, like this sector and this sector, but you can see that like overall, it's still a duplication. It's outclassed by other bus services, and okay, I don't know how well CSS buses were being promoted back then, or even in the 2000s, but like the niche areas of 608, East Coast Road, as well as Upper East Coast Road, well, unfortunately, they had Service 10, which went up here. So 608 still sort of functions as like a 10E, just without the express fares. It was not as fast as 10E, it was still like it wasn't as fast, obviously, because this one is not express. I mean, this is like sort of express, more of like rapid. But if 608's purpose is just to be a Service 10E, a clone of it, and to bridge Marine Terrace area to East Coast, I mean, and your niche area not being big enough, unlike in the case of Service 16, this was kind of why 608 just couldn't survive. So maybe a fun challenge would be, how would I model 608 so that it actually becomes successful today? I wouldn't make it go Henderson, because there's already 16 and 851. It's just not going to be the case. You might as well just revive the old route from 605. So this is how I would do it. Bukit Merah, Telok Blangah Way, let it go inside Permai, and then Lower Delta Road, and then one bound, you could make it serve Jalan Bukit Ho Swee. And then the other bound, you can make it serve Havelock Road Minor. And then obviously Jalan Bukit Ho Swee, Zion Road, and stuff like that. Or you could even... Okay, I know it's like a clone of 123M. You want to make it go inside Tiong Bahru and then Jalan Bukit Ho Swee, stuff like... It's also possible, but like I'm just saying, I would actually link up Telok Blangah Way with like this general area, because I would just bridge the link. Bridge the gap, sorry. Then what I would do is Havelock Road. Okay, this is Upper Cross Street in the Bukit Merah bound. I would actually make this one serve Chinatown. So, okay. Okay, now this one I have to compromise a little bit. I cannot like actually make it serve Chinatown. I have to like make it serve South Bridge Road. In the other direction, I can use Kreta Ayer and... Okay, this is like Chinatown Station, DTL, NEL. But basically, conceptually, I would make it still go Maxwell. And then I would make it go Robinson and then Central Boulevard. Sorry, Robinson and Shenton Way. Honestly, I might even make 608 just wind a bit. Hub Synergy Point. And then I would make 608 go via, just like the CDS, Marina Boulevard and Central Boulevard. And I wouldn't make it touch MC, because MC is like really jam prone. So Marina, Central Boulevard, Shears Avenue, ECP. I would just make it go ECP all the way. There are two options. You exit Fort Road, you serve Mountbatten, or you just exit at Tanjong Katong Road South. Up to you. But I don't want to make it go I don't want to make it go Nickel Highway, because Nickel Highway is already like there's already 10, 196, 14, 16, yada yada yada. I don't want it to compete with this. I want my version of 608 to actually use the expressway for good reason, so that it can like effectively compete with these. And then after that, how do I say it? Since 36 is like not ever gonna be rationalized, at most they will just hit the frequency. I wouldn't even think of sending it to Changi Airport. So basically after this, I wouldn't make it go East Coast. I would just make it go Parkway Parade. Like Marine Parade. I would just send it all the way down Marine Parade, and then... You know what? Let's make this a double CBD service. Okay, I know that like Changi Business Park is like slowly declining, but I'm just saying conceptually, why not make 608 absorb the entirety of like 47? So just la 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 da, da, da. Yeah, you get a point. So it links Shenton Way Marine Parade and Changi Business Park. That's one idea to do it. That's one way to do it. And then the other suggestion I have is not to send it to Changi Business Park since it's failing. This is Bedok South Avenue 3. I would actually make this one bridge the gap, like New Upper Changi Road, Bedok North Avenue 3. I would send this thing to Bedok Reservoir. And then for this 608, I know this is not necessarily good when it comes to BC welfare. I'm just telling you how I would do it in order to make it survive. Because 46 right now, it doesn't touch Temasek Poly. I'm gonna send 608 to touch Temasek Poly, and then I'm gonna send it up Avenue 8. Basically, I'm gonna try to make 608 go to Tampines North without like cloning 46 too much. So that is one way to route 608. You touch Temasek Poly because that's where all your demand is gonna come from. So that's how I would make my own version of like 608. So to recall, it's Telok Blangah Way, and then it's like Jalan Bukit Ho Swee area, and then Chinatown, I mean in one bound, unfortunately because of the way the roads are configured, Maxwell Road, and then CBD, I would just make it go Marina and Central Boulevard. Then I would make it ECP all the way to Mountbatten area, and then Marine Parade, Bedok South, then Temasek Poly, and pardon my handwriting, Tampines North. That's how I would do it. Not necessarily the best for BC welfare, but come on, like 51 exists, 61 exists. This is like one way I would try to bring 608 back, because again, it's a shame.